Othon found himself in serious trouble. A laser blast had pierced his armor, and now his right arm no longer functioned as it should. A reasonably large, sprawling pile of bodies surrounded him, and his animated gauntlet swords were running with gall blood. He knelt down on one knee and performed a spell that he used on such occasions. Othon projected a bubble of spectral light around himself. The lasers that stuck this medium were absorbed like detergent into water. As the arcane warrior was initiating a healing spell on his right shoulder, he noticed a barrier of gravel bags poorly protecting and concealing a heavy machine gun in the distance ahead and to his left. Damnation! His thought flashed as he ceased his magical work on his painful scorch wound. Precisely as Othon had expected, two fully enclosed helmets popped up from behind the barricade of bagged stones, and the mighty 9.33 mm machine gun began chanting its loud, relentless death sonnet. Where the shots struck the featureless ground, it was more of a splash than a solid impact. As Othon dived towards some cover, through what remained of his now disappearing bubble of glistening multicolored light, he noticed that the rounds were leaving pools of liquid in the dirt and concrete where they hit. "Solvent rounds!" Othon deduced with concern as he sheltered behind a large, rusty metallic container. Commander Piren blasted his wide-beam laser cannon at Arajakal. Many years of reflex training mastery had endowed Arajakal with impressive speed of movement. He cartwheeled evasively, flicking his body around the inside of the temporary shelter. The wide violet beam radiated out like an ungodly spotlight, blazing through both the wall of the tent and the base surgeon. Arajakal recovered his footing after the acrobatic maneuvers and decided that Piren would share the fate that so many of his enemies had suffered. Taking a special grip on his glowing orange orb, he undertook a familiar procedure. The Gaul immigrant commander burst into a towering plume of searing, white lime-colored flames. In seconds he had been consumed entirely by the bright green fire. A pile of ash and burned and melted equipment was all that marked his existence. The sentry that remained looked distressed when he noted the complacent expression Arajakal wore. He stared for a moment at the volcanic weapon he held and considered his position. It fell to the ground as his heavy mechanical footsteps drew away into the night. It is difficult at best to operate a heavy machine gun and fend off sword-wielding animated gauntlets. Othon was brutally teaching the gun crew this lesson. The swarm of 5 dark reddish-gold gloves with Siva blades flew swiftly. One was struck with a chemical projectile and careered off to the side as its blade was largely eaten away by the corrosives used in the ammunition. The other 4 made it to the defensive position unhindered. From above, the chopped repeatedly, kendo style, down onto the heads of the gunner and loader. The constant, rhythmic, explosive sounds of the machine gun ceased, and Othon slumped back into the old shipping container with relief. He then began healing his agonizing laser wound. The streaks of laser fire also abated, and Othon assumed that the remainder of the new Gaul had withdrawn, and he was correct. As the dust of victory settled, the voiceover begins. In the aftermath of the battle, a new crisis arose. Arajakal, Othon's comrade, found himself in a desperate race against time. His friend Siraj was poisoned, and the antidote, the antivenin, was nowhere in sight. The sound of hurried footsteps echo in the background. Arajakal, using his last reserves of magical energy, cast the seldom-used Erupt spell. His body melted into the earth, a spectacle both fascinating and horrifying, only to re-emerge at Siraj's side. A painful groan is heard. Siraj was on the brink of death when the antivenin was administered, a shot to the thigh that brought him back from the precipice. The sound of a sigh of relief fades in. As night fell, they agreed to move away from the outpost they had just raided. It was a victory, yes, but it came at a cost. As they retreated into the shadows, they knew they had to prepare for the battles yet to come. The scene ends with the sound of footsteps retreating into the distance.